My name is Jill Vergara. I'm a representative for District 7 and the chair of the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee for the RTM. Tonight is our regular meeting scheduled on the fourth Wednesdays of every month at 6:30. We're starting this meeting tonight at 6:40. The members in attendance are me and Mark McDermott and Cindy Parham. Hannah Gale was running late. She's in a meeting and she is trying to come, but she's not sure she's going to make it.
I'll take notes.
Okay. We have enough for quorum and we don't have very many voting items. And actually the voting item that we do have on the agenda, we're going to postpone because we haven't received the minutes yet. So let's do the pledge.
I pledge to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So can I have a motion to postpone approval of these minutes until our next regularly?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. I'll second.
Second it.
Oh, great.
Mark.
Seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, great.
Why did Mark want to walk a quarter mile down the street to come?
I'm not in Fairfield. My daughter is in fencing camp in Rhode Island, so I'm
Just
up
making everyone
I'm up in the Cape, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Gordon, how do you spell your last name? MC?
No, that's Irish. I'm Scottish. M-A-C, small k, E-N-Z-I-E, all one word. First name is Gordon, G-O-R-D-O-N.
And your well, when you speak later, your address?
11 Palmer, P-L-M-E-R, Bridge, except it's a new word, in Fairfield.
Got it. And then we have Bill's here. No, Bill's not here. Oh, Herb is here.
Do you want me to make this bigger?
I just wanted to make sure I had everyone.
Okay.
And of course, Ross.
Thank you for joining, Ross. So you're up because you're the next on the agenda. We've been wanting to talk to you about a bunch of things related to senior and disabled tax relief, and you gave us that report on Monday. And I did want to thank you for refining the charts. If anyone has some time to take a look at all of the reports that Ross put onto the agendas and minutes manager, it's under the RTM Senior and Disabled Tax Relief folder under the, it has a spot for assessor reports under our backup documents. And Ross uploaded all of the reports, I think since FY 2014. And there's a noticeable difference with all of the information that we're tracking. And I think that that's so important to have honed all of these different categories and the tables that we're, the way that we're tracking this now. So thank you for doing that, Ross. I know it takes a lot of time.
Thank you, Ross.
So there were a couple questions that I held off on at the Monday meeting, and we're largely focused on deferral right now. I don't know if you got that impression from Monday. So I was curious about the way that we list deferrals on your assessor report, because it is listed as having revenue loss. And I don't really understand why we have it register as revenue loss when it's a deferral and we know that we're getting that money in the future. Because some other towns don't count it as revenue loss. Like the Westport assessor told me that they don't count theirs as revenue loss. Can you explain that to me? I think you're muted.
I am. I'm doing the report in the same format that it was done by my predecessors, so I'm following along on the same format. But I would say that it, you know, there is a point in time where you recoup it, but it is a impact to the collection for the year that it's not collected. You know, it does reduce the collector's collections.
Okay,
It's like a future value, right? So it's not, it is a loss this year, but
Right.
it'll be a gain another year and be a watch.
I guess in
mean-
Westport, where they have so many more participants in their deferral program, when they have people coming into the program in that same year, they often have someone leaving the program at the same time. So that cyclical aspect of it maybe makes it so that they're not feeling that.
Got it. People are paying it back because they're selling or
Right.
dying, and selling is conveyed. So there's always loss and there's always gain. So it probably comes out to a net gain.
Right, there's more
Or
of a
net.
cushion by having more participants in it.
So they must show the net loss or the net gain for that year. They have so many more people doing it. How
It
many
should
people?
probably be
It should probably be what?
two separate line items. You know, what you're not collecting in the current year, and then your budget amount for what you anticipate to recoup, and make that two different items.
Uh-huh, okay.
Who would tell us to do that? Like the CFO? Like who would make
I
that
think
change?
that would be, yeah, I think that's the appropriate source.
Okay, so we should talk to Jared about this,
About how it would be,
With
reflected,
the two line items?
yeah, I think it would be part of the budget.
okay. Also in the ordinance, there's a cap that's specific to deferral that I never really understood. So it's limited in a way that the credit isn't. Credit is limited to 2.5% of the total real property tax levied, which would be, when we were doing the revisions before, I thought it was close to 6.5 million a few years ago. What's that cap now, the 2.5% of total real property?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the total. Yeah, I wouldn't want to venture guess because I don't know the total revenue, what they build. I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, I'll email you that question, but in that same section, it's 9511, amount of relief granted through program limited. It limits the total amount of deferral is limited to maximum of 500,000 in any tax year. So I don't even know what that 500,000 reflects.
So much
Is that the
like
total
big
amount?
numbers.
Is that the total amount that someone's deferring?
Oh, like everyone in the pool, because right now we only have 16,000 deferred, so we have a town max of 500,000.
Uh-huh.
I don't know when that came to be, 2013 or?
I think that was included in the 2013. Yeah.
So it's voted on it as a committee.
Uh-huh. Does that make sense as a cap? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. It never, you know, we've never been anywhere near close to that kind of a number, so it's never been really scrutinized, but I would suspect it means 500,000 over the program, you know, overall program years. So if you had somebody that's been in 5 years and they've got, you know, 50,000 and another person's been in it 7 years and they owe 70,000 once they terminate the program, that would be 130 towards, or 120 towards the 500. Because I don't think
Wow.
you'd ever reach 1,000 in a single year. You'd
With
have
the
hundreds of
500,000,
participants.
would you think that 500,000 references the cumulative
Yeah.
amounts? That seems very narrow then. It seems very restrictive. Why would deferral be more restrictive than credits? Doesn't make any sense to me.
We're promoting the program. That's why.
Okay, well, this is, that, if it's cumulative, then I think that that's a long-term problem if we do want to attract more people to the deferral.
Where did you find that,
program.
in the ordinance?
Yeah, it's in the ordinance.
If it's cumulative, that 500,000 over the program term, it's a lot of money. That's, I mean, if you're in it for 10 years and let's say you defer 16,000 a year, that's 160,000. That, $500,000, you'd have to be in the program for 30 years deferring what? Or 20 years deferring $25,000 a year.
An individual.
It's not individual, it's for everybody on the program.
Did they, is that what Ross was saying? I thought he was saying per person.
I don't think, Ross, did you think it was per person?
I just don't know.
I
Well,
don't,
that's-
so because
That's what I got from what Ross was saying, that you're in the program, the max you could defer over the lifetime of you being in the program is $500,000.
How does it read?
I mean, if the whole program is only $500,000, that would be,
it's for the whole program, because it says
really?
the total amount that can be deferred under section 95-15B is limited to a maximum of 500,000 in any tax year. So it's I don't think it's cumulative,
No, any tax year.
but it's in each tax year, what can be, for all deferral participants, what can be deferred.
So we had a $484,000 cushion. No problem there.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
I still don't completely understand why we have to differentiate between deferral and credit and put a specific limit on the deferral participation, but it seems extremely limiting.
I mean, if that's an annual limit, right now we're looking at just over $2,500 per person for the two that are in it. It would take nearly 200 people to get to hit that 500,000. So
Yeah,
that's a huge.
That's our goal.
yeah, I know. I think Westport has about 200. I have to check that list, but they have a lot of deferral participants.
Wow.
Mark, Cindy, do you
We're
have?
not going to get anywhere near that. No matter, even if you take the age limit off and raise the income for the deferral, you still won't get that many.
And in Westport, the deferral maximum income is 75,000. You can defer up to 100% of your taxes. The interest rate is only 1%. We're at 3%. And anyone with income 75,000 to 100,000, it will cover only the tax increases that can be deferred. And the age is 65 years old.
What does their credit program look like?
I don't know. I was just researching deferral these days.
Because that's what's going to not make the deferral attractive, is the fact that the credit program is so lucrative in Fairfield. You at the lower income levels, you're getting $6,500, $7,500. You're already getting 75% off your taxes. Why would you defer and have to repay that?
Right. Yeah, Westport's was a little bit less. They had a multiplier. And I think that when we were investigating it a few years ago, their average benefit was about $2,800 for their participants. The income was lower than ours. The income was 65,000. And then, like Cindy said, the deferral income went up higher. And they could do it in combination.
Hmm.
So it seems like there are a few different limiting factors for deferral, because it's not just that credit is so attractive, it's also that deferral is you can only defer 50% of it.
Right.
And the 75 age limit for 75 years, that's odd.
It's going to cost people $600 to fill up their oil tank. They're going to think about deferral more and more. They're going to say, what do I have? What do I have to pay out? What can I not pay? I think not pay my taxes. I mean, ours is only 50%, but in Westport, 100. That's going to save me a little bit of money to fill up my oil tank this winter coming up. I think it can be marketed more strongly. I do. I mean, if we could do like woman on the street. Did you know we had a tax deferral program? I bet 9 out of 10 don't even know. Are you 65 and older? I have a question for you. How much we should do a poll.
We definitely need to advertise it more.
Let's just leave a bunch of surveys at the senior center. I mean, how many people are members there? 4,000? I thought they had like 4,000 members, up from like 500 a few years ago. So can't we just have them do a survey or an online? I bet Herb has all their emails. You know? Do you even know we have it?
Right.
I think people know the credit program because like Ross said, it's very good, but do people even know it's an option?
Mark, did you have any questions about the report? Because you were moderating the other night, so I don't know if you had anything that specific that you wanted to ask about the report.
No, I think you guys did a good job asking the questions, and so.
Okay. In that information that I sent today, and I sent it out to Mark, who sent it to the RTM, Herb from Fairfield Senior Advocates, Herb Limecooler, sent me some questions or comments about those, the data, and mentions that they have information that reflects very high sales numbers for was it FY 21, Herb?
23, Jill. So the latest year.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's the year, and this actually, part of this data came from Ross. So this is the for the year ending June of roughly June of 2021. So that year ending, there appears to be a market increase that year over prior years. Appears to be a market increase. And that would make sense because during the pandemic, we know that there were a large number of sales, disproportionate number of sales that took place. And the data we have indicates that almost 20% of those were senior households.
Ross, is it possible to get more granular details about the sales from our programs, from our relief programs? You did that a few years ago where you correlated the sales to assessments and income. I thought that was helpful to have that information, that overlapping information.
Did I pass the data along?
No, you haven't. That's the other thing. That would be
Okay.
great to get that data so that we could get help from Fairfield Senior Advocates and Herb doing these kinds of pivot tables that you were talking about the other day.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll pull out all the identifying information from the data, and then I'll pass that along.
Okay. And Herb, do you have connections at Fairfield U? Because if we could get help from maybe their policy groups or mathematics in trying to run these numbers, not just for our town, but if we could maybe get more towns to participate in it, it would be so interesting to see how different programs are working in all these different area towns. We just really haven't been analyzing how do we analyze how these programs are working.
Jill, depending upon the nature of the data, we may be able to do it ourselves. But we do have a strong relationship with them that we hope to be expanded under this age-friendly initiative that we're working on with them and others. So I would say the short answer would be yes, but we'd have to pull the resources together.
Okay, I think that would be great to do, and
Statistics, there's statistics classes.
yeah, Representative Gerber is great with these numbers and tables, and he said that he would try to help as much as he could too. He's really interested in this, and he was reading all the information from Ross's report and realized it would, he talked to me about how important it is to get this, to analyze this more closely. I don't know if Herb or Gordon, you have questions for Mr. Murray?
The only question, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. I don't know how much interaction and communications you've had with other towns besides Westport. It seems to me there's still an awful lot to be learned from other towns that we don't have or they need at least updating. And I suggest maybe as a straw man proposal that maybe you take the 13 towns or whatever the actual number is and split them up into 3 groups and between FSA and you folks is actually contact every town and understand better what their results are, how do they justify the program to their fiscal management and stuff like that. And that we would prepare jointly a questionnaire to be used in these telephone calls so that we're asking the same questions from each of the 3 groups, 3 people. What do you think about that?
Are you talking about just deferral or about credit and deferral and freeze?
Credit and deferral, do they use asset tests? Do they do this? Do they do that?
And we only looked at deferral recently but nothing's been put together like too much of an analysis. I know that Bill had asked to find out like how they're marketing their deferral program. I haven't been able to do that yet. But like you said, an actual checklist of these are the 10 questions we want answered per town, so we have consistent information.
Yes, I've been involved, as Herb has, with this program, and it's almost embarrassing as I go back to one incident that we had about 2 years ago when the Board of Finance asked us, had we interviewed or done market assessment work with the other towns, and we had to say not really. Also, the exit interviews or what was the information that was codified in some way about what people who were applying for this program say about the programs, and what did they say after they get the money? Is this really valuable? What would you do with if you couldn't get the money? Maybe some more mature questions, so that we have. I think we just don't appear, and it's more than a cosmetic issue. We just don't seem to appear to have a handle on feedback from the program and from prospects.
Well, I mean, when they're filling out the affidavit every year, that's the time to have another sheet of paper underneath, you know, a quick survey.
And I think the exit interviews, I think it's a great idea, but I do think there's some administrative difficulties with it. And I don't know, Ross, how would you be able to do these kinds of exit interviews? How is it communicated to you when someone leaves the program?
A lot of times they don't communicate to us at all. They just don't refile. You know, as these people age, sometimes their kids take them into their home, and maybe a grandkid is living in the house or they're renting it. We just don't know. They just don't come.
Ross, if you ran a business and you lost an account, wouldn't you ask the salesman to please contact the account and find out why they left you?
But you said there's staffing issues, Ross, that it was difficult to do that.
Well, that's
Yeah,
a different.
This is an
Right,
account,
I mean,
this is an account that's costing you money, so you probably wouldn't contact them. At the end of the
I
day.
don't know how. But
There's 75 of those people last year that you're not going to be able to contact anymore. So there is no exit interview. They've already exited the world.
Oh, well, they know who died.
Ross, you were starting to say something. What?
Yeah, I'm not sure where we were, so.
Okay.
Just following up on Gordon's comment, I know we should probably have a separate discussion about how we might engage resources from the universities, including Fairfield U. I mean, there are a lot of potential applications that we've kind of had in mind, just sort of thoughts about how things might work, and they have resources that they might make available to do the kind of work that Gordon suggested. Students, maybe grads or undergrads, that could help us in terms of gathering information about attrition of the program and so forth. But it's kind of a big convoluted thing in terms of how we would deploy those resources. So I think that needs to be kind of a separate discussion, I think, that we would have.
Okay. On my part, in terms of analyzing comparative data from other towns, we did that. We did that a few years ago, and we were actually told by the Board of Finance, we don't care what other towns do. That drove us to decide to focus almost exclusively on how these programs work in our own town, because that was what we were directed to do by the Board of Finance. They literally told us, we don't care what other towns do. So, if we decide as a group, well, actually, it's still important to know what these other towns are doing and how these programs are functioning in their towns, whether or not it's actually incentivizing seniors to stay, then we can do it again. It was very time consuming. So my issue is that it was time consuming and then it was thrown out. And I don't want that to happen again.
Wouldn't it be nice, though, to understand how they justify their programs with town management?
Yes, I just don't know if we're going to be able to get that kind of detail from the towns. I think it was hard enough to get the data from each of the assessors. I'm not sure they're going to tell us, have policy discussions with us.
I would just say one more thing. I think in addition to getting data from other towns, the committee should have a strategy in terms of how it would want to deploy a tool. As an example, the deferral program. So if you envision the deferral program as a tool that might, following up on Ross's comment about the fact that our credit program is pretty rich for lower income brackets. If your strategy for the deferral program is to keep seniors by making that available as a key tool for higher income seniors, then that should be factored into the eligibility, our eligibility for the deferral program. So maybe we would select a different eligibility than maybe what another town does or has in mind. So I think the strategy is an important complement to the comparative data.
I agree.
I would agree with that comment.
I think the demographic information is also works together with this kind of comparative information too. And it's reflective, it can be interpreted as being reflective of whether these programs were successful or not. Because if we turn to the charts that Gordon did, you see that some towns started out in 1990 with much less senior populations proportionately than Fairfield, and they went in the complete opposite direction. They increased significantly their percentages of seniors over these years, and Fairfield decreased. So I think all this information is important to kind of bring together and synthesize it. I think the demographics really can help us analyze some of the way that our programs work or not. Cindy, did you have any other?
Gordon's
comments?
charts are above my head.
Did you have any questions for Ross about his?
No.
Okay.
I do like the idea of the strategy and Gordon's idea about asking every town the same questions. Maybe in person, they'd be more apt to answer us. I'm not going to drive to West Hartford necessarily, but Fairfield County, New Haven County, I'm happy to drive around and get their impressions or make an appointment. Do we want to focus on credit or deferral or just one or both in the research?
I don't think it's realistic to do anything with credit, because the sense that I have from the Board of Finance is that they don't want to touch that after having gone in and revised it so recently.
Well, then deferral is what we marked then. Let's focus on that.
Could I just add one more comment to your discussion of demographics, just really quickly? So what we have in Fairfield is sort of an unusual phenomenon in that I think we now have roughly 9,000 undergrads between Fairfield U and Sacred Heart. And that number has really grown pretty dramatically over the years. So what that is doing is actually, I think we'd have to test that. I think what that's doing is depressing the apparent senior population as a percentage of the whole in town. So we need to probably delve deeper than just looking at the nominal numbers in terms of analyzing what's actually going on.
I have to interject there, Herb. The actual census reports on those students is available, and it's only 4,000 people. Why? Because I'm sure many of the people who were questioned during the census, these young people, still insisted that their home address was back in Kansas or outside of Fairfield, and or they didn't answer at all. I mean, these are college kids. So I think the number that is actually you'll see in the census data is less than what is actually happening in terms of students being in town.
Okay, we can delve into that more and see how it's changed over the years as well.
Yeah. But they have census tracts for Fairfield State University, and another census tract is SHU.
Ross, I have a couple more questions about the chart. And it's your assessor report. It's the schedule of benefits ranges at the lower right corner. It has columns for the income, number of accounts, number at dollar max, number at percent max, at 25% min, and then total. I wanted to see if you could explain what each of the categories is. That number at the dollar max, it's each one. I'm pretty sure that the at 25% minimum, that's the state's requirement that someone pays at least 25% of their property taxes. And so all of these listed in all of those income groups are all the people at that maximum. These are all people who are receiving credits that are 75% of their tax bills. That seems really high. 382 people.
The people that are at the 25% in that column, what I tried to capture there is those that are limited by the 25% cap. So they're not hitting the dollar max. They're getting less than the dollar max, and they're getting less than the percent max. So the people in the lowest income are at 75%. So if they were getting the max on either the credit or on the dollar amount, I chose that column for them. If it was the percent, it was the percent max. But if the 25% was limiting them, that's how they ended up in that column. So those are just the people where the 25% statutory minimum was affecting them.
Okay. I still don't completely understand because before how we were using this figure was we were trying to maximize this number. I remember that. And we were trying to get as many people as we possibly could to be at this max limit of the 25% allowed.
But if they're right. And like for instance, the 70 people that are at the percent, they're only paying 25%.
Yeah, 82 people are.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, 382.
But there's a few people that.
I didn't say all 382, but
And
he
I
said
like an example. They're not getting 75%, but they're at the 25% minimum.
Oh.
That happen.
that happens.
We have to take the state benefit off of there also.
Right.
So when you're calculating the benefit, you have to pull the state benefit off, and then the town comes off second. So sometimes because they're getting, depending on how much their state benefit is, that could cause them not to hit the dollar or the percent max in the program, but hit the 25% state minimum.
Right. I'm still confused, so maybe I should just come into your office and try to figure this out, because I thought that the most that we were going to get to max out in this way was around 220 people. It would, so is that what the 382 total people in that column, that reflects what? I don't understand what it is.
People whose benefit is limited by the 25% state minimum and not the dollar max or not the percent max.
Do they not qualify for the state program? It's not
Yes
related.
and no, they're mixed in together.
Oh. Just say it one more time, Ross, how that number comes to be.
I'm sorry?
Can you just explain it one more time? I need to hear it again. That
So the
number.
people at the 20, people in that column are limited by the state minimum of 25%. They're not limited by the dollar cap, and they're not limited by the percent cap.
And that's a completely different category than max benefits.
Well, what do you mean by max benefits?
Like the 75% of taxes.
Yeah, so we and the Board of Finance agreed with us on about trying to maximize that number. We had a lower number before the program was changed, and only about, I think, 170 people were receiving the maximum amount of benefits that they could possibly receive. And it was mostly focused on the lower income ranges. And when the program was enhanced, it increased that number to around a little over 200. But it was concentrated still in the lower income ranges. I thought that the highest it went for max benefits for people was the 33,000 income category. So I guess I'm just confused about what the difference is between the max benefits that we were looking at. And I think that the chair of the Board of Finance, that's what he was tracking too, largely in his charts. And what this column is, the 25% minimum, because it seems like the same thing to me. If people are at that place where they're
There's a lot of people that are at 25%. It's just what got them there. So for instance, the 19 people that make under 19,100 that are at the dollar max, they could be at 75%. They could be paying only 25% of their tax bill, but they're getting the max dollars.
right.
The people that actually a better example is the people in the next column, the 70 that are at the percent max. Those people are paying 25% of their tax bill because that's the percent is 75%. So they're maxed out on the percentage.
Right.
The 8 people aren't maxed out on the percentage, but they're maxed out on the 25% minimum. So you have 3 things that can limit the amount of their benefit. It's the dollar cap, the percent max, or the 25% minimum.
Okay. But doesn't that mean that 382 people are being credited back 75% of their taxes?
Yes, it should be. I mean, I'll go read.
So that's what I'm saying is that's great. I mean, that's wonderful if so many
I'll
people
check
are. but it's surprising because it's a really high number.
That was a difficult chart to include. I will tell you that.
Okay,
To pick all the groups out of the data and identify them all, because it's a bit of a challenge. But I'll double check that.
okay. Yeah, I'd like to check that because we also didn't, it's surprising to max out anyone in the really higher income ranges. I considering what the dollar caps are and what the percentage cap is. So,
Yep, I'll double check it.
okay. And that's what those other columns are, the number at the dollar max, that's what that category dollar amount limit is. And the number at the percent max, that's what those percentages are set at for each of those income levels.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Just have to talk it out. Are you using the same one or a new one?
Yes, the same one.
Okay.
Yeah, from Monday. So,
No, not the one from February 16th.
it's from June 13th,
Okay.
2022.
Yeah, it was in the backup stuff.
So is it okay to move on to the demographic discussion with Mr. McKenzie?
Please, I look forward to it. That's why I
Okay,
came to the show.
okay.
I just like to comment on the asset cap. If you remember back about 4 years ago, we started having them sign an affidavit that their assets did not exceed 650. And that's what really triggered people to I'll say it not apply because of their limits.
Because they had to sign.
Before that, there was no affidavit. It was just, we would mention it and then that was it. And there was no way for us to, there was no information that we had from them to verify that. So that's why the numbers were very low, up until the point where they had to start signing the affidavit. Once they had to sign the affidavit, we saw a lot more people with their, admitting to their assets being over 650. So that's why you see the increase in the last 4 years in that category.
Okay. And has it been easier for you to administer this? If you could pick a system to use, you're okay with continuing with QTAV? You wouldn't switch it over to an assessment limit?
Yeah, this makes it manageable to just, rely on them signing the affidavit that their assets don't exceed 650. It's fine. It's good.
Okay.
And if they're not there, if their conservator or POA or child or neighbor or guy that rakes their leaf brings it for them, do they have to attest for the client? The resident?
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if they're not like a legal guardian of any sort, it's just whoever came with the paperwork.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a problem because, the application could be signed by anybody. Anybody can bring the data in, the income information in for an applicant, but, we do have them sign the affidavit.
And how many people do you think really don't have somebody who's a legal guardian come in a year? Under 10, less than 20? Like just people that randomly, like someone from the senior center brought it, a social worker brought it.
Good question. I don't know.
No,
I
just
don't
wondering,
take the app.
if it's a big
I don't
problem,
take
if it's a lot of people, we could start thinking, oh, there's some fraud because the guy that rakes my leaves doesn't know I have a house in Ireland, Mr. McDermott. So they wrote down, I only have 450,000, but meanwhile I have a house in Europe somewhere. So, it kind of
it's
puts
not-
the onus on that person coming in.
It's not a tremendous number.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I'm not applying for the program.
No, you're too young. You're much too young.
Not that much, John. 4 more years.
4 more years. Is that you as moderator? 4 more years.
That would be a negative.
Moderator for life.
Well, thank you, Ross.
Okay.
Great to see you. You can stay
Yep.
for the demographic discussion, if you'd like, but I really appreciate you coming to our meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ross.
Thank
Good to see you. You're like
Okay.
family.
Talk to you later.
And
Gordon, do you want to lead the discussion on your chart and explain how you got the data and what you're following?
Where is that chart?
I have an extra copy. It's also, we emailed it.
Oh, thank you.
Put on your
Yeah, I
glasses.
saw that, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, I think I'll.
Are you a PhD, Gordon, or what?
Gordon, what happened?
He's what?
You are. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I sent 2 things. One is the 15 towns comparison with different kinds of data. And then I put together a second document, Jill, that I sent to you a while ago about focused on the town of Fairfield with more detailed data. So if you want me to lead, I'll just say a few, I think, relevant points. I don't want to go into all the details unless you have questions. We use the ACS data, that's American Community Service, linked to the 2020 10-year detailed census exercise. As you know, it's done every 10 years. But if you want to have the most accurate data, you use the 10-year data for 2020, merged with the previous 5 years, because they keep updating it every year because of errors, because of things that they discovered, trends that take place. And so the data that we are using, all of us, is the most accurate data that is available to the Census Department. That's one point I wanted to make. Another point is that if you look at the population change in Fairfield, at 65 and above, it's 9,596 people. That's 15.6% of our total population. The moment you jump to 75, both numbers are cut in half. That is to say, there's a lot of people between 65 and 75. Keep that in mind as you discuss the deferral program. Another point to make is that, and I don't know the reasons for this, but there it is, there are the numbers. For people who were 60 years of age and over, in other words, the total, there was a big jump between 2010 data and 2020. That population increased by 21.8%. I don't know why, but the older folks came in much larger numbers than previous decades. So I don't know what else you want to discuss, but I mean, it's got the basic kinds of data on the 15 towns.
Sorry, is there a place where over 75 is? I'm only seeing the over 65.
I think that that's, or
on
I have a printout from what Gordon sent me.
Okay.
And I think I sent it to you all a while ago, but I didn't resend it recently.
All right. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
The answer is I only have it for Fairfield, but it can be gotten for each of the 15 towns, any town in Fairfield, in Connecticut. If you feel that would be helpful, I would be willing to get it. It takes time. These are not the easiest data to use, but if you think it's important, I would do it. Jill, I've lost you here on the image.
Oh, Uh,
There we go. You're
okay.
back.
Okay. So I don't know if you heard the committee meetings on Monday, but a question came up about the demographic information and whether or not we compare what Fairfield's demographics were like earlier when the program began, when the programs began versus now, or how it's shifted, and I think that the representative was referring to incomes. And so I was wondering whether we could maybe get more information about, past years. And
Now, are you talking for Fairfield or are you talking?
specific to Fairfield, not for everybody.
Yeah. Well, you have to take a look at the material. I mean, I've got the median household income figures. I've got the value of the housing units that are occupied.
But that's all 2020 information, which I think is really important to have. But I do think that some kind of, like to understand what it was previously when we had more people on the program, it would be helpful to understand maybe differences in income ranges.
That's relatively easy to do, and I will do that. I will do it year by year. I mean,
Okay.
the program's been around since 2013, right? Jill?
I don't know. Oh, no, the program's been around since 1982, but we changed it in
Oh.
2013. So information going back all the way to the 90s would be helpful.
By year or just at 5-year or 10-year segments?
5-year or 10-year segments.
That sounds more sensible.
to
I will
get
do
an
that.
idea. And does the 2020 information reflect the pandemic changes? There have been some real significant shifts. And like Herb has mentioned, there are significant number of sales. So we're seeing an increase in seniors. But I'm not sure if that's completely accurate.
I think, Jill, you can probably expect that it includes only part of it. I mean, the census came at an inopportune time, really in the middle of the pandemic. So that data that I referred to that we got from Ross, that went through, for instance, May of 2021, even that did not include all of the pandemic impact on sales, we believe. So I'm sure that the census data, which was captured in 2000, did not capture all the pandemic.
In fact, it was April 1 of 2000, so even earlier.
You mean 2020?
Yes, April 1.
2020.
It's where you were April 1, 2020. That's correct.
I know, Herb, you said that you didn't think it was a good idea to look at these numbers in a kind of vacuum. And, you said it's important to recognize that we have undergrads who've been counted maybe in a way that they weren't previously. So that might be adjusting our levels of the way that reflects the portion of seniors, percent of seniors. But I do think that it's significant when you're looking at a Reading, Ridgefield, or Newtown, how their numbers have completely shifted. And I do think that it's interesting that all three of those towns made a concerted effort to have very healthy tax relief programs for their seniors.
Sure.
And they were very public about it. They released press releases about it, and I would consider those towns to have the best programs in the state for seniors.
What you might want to do, Jill, is to look at what the under 18 population is. I take that back. Probably want to look at what the under, well, see what we can get. But I think you ideally want to be looking at, say, the under 22 population. and how that, in those towns, how that's changed over time, and then how the senior buckets have changed over time.
Why do you say that, Herb? I don't quite understand.
Well, what I'm saying, Gordon, is we have, so theoretically, students at Fairfield U and Sacred Heart are to register where they're being schooled. That's the instruction that came from the census this year. We believe those census instructions have changed over time, or been less clear in prior census. That's what we've got by talking to census people. But to the extent that, I think you can only really look at senior populations and that change by looking at the whole of the town and how those other compositions have changed. So that if in fact Fairfield's population of under 22s is markedly different than that of Newtown, for instance, I think that's something to take into consideration. And I think you also want to see how that's changed over time as a consideration. That's all.
I just think it's a very moving target right now. You know, I'm seeing so many younger people with children even moving back in with their elderly parents at this point in time. So, you know, I think, you know, the economic shift right now is such a moving target. It's going to be really hard to get an accurate picture.
Yeah, it's always just a snapshot in time. It's
Right.
going to be changeable.
Well, but again, I'm not doubting that at all. But I mean, if people follow the instructions in terms of where they register, you know, they should be registering where they're going to school.
Right. Yeah.
Where they spent 6 months or more of the year as of April, and where were they on April 1?
April 1, yeah.
And that kind of information about population under 22, that's readily available on the ACS data?
Yes,
Okay.
that's one of the 21 and under is a magic number, 65 and over is a magic number, and then the others, and then the total. Once you get beyond that into finer gradations, then it just requires a little more digging. So if we're doing it for one town is one thing, doing it for 13 towns is another one. That's a much bigger job. So let me look at it, but definitely for Fairfield, worth the effort, and we'll do it.
Thank you. So Gordon, you have always focused on the demographics. Is there something, can you explain why and what you think this contributes to our analysis of the programs?
Well, it can, for example, give you a very precise idea, as precise as this kind of work does, or yields, is what the number of people is if you move the deferral program from 65, from 75 down to 65, for example. You can get an idea of income by age group. We can't get, as you know, Jill, from our several conversations on this, the ideal would be to understand what the median income is for owner-occupied housing for 65 and above. You know, we put all those three constraints together. The data, census data, does not allow you to do that, to have such fine slices at a town level like Fairfield. But we can get pretty close to it using households. So I think it just gives you a better picture if you do the data analysis on trends, on population by age, and what is the market, if I could use that word, for addressing different age groups within the senior disabled program. The number of people, their income.
So this can help project some kind of our fiscal impact if we choose to change some parts of these programs.
It would give you a base from which you folks would have to derive what you think the demand will be. I mean, that's not going to come from the census. All the census data will do is tell you what your open field is, what the market is, the total market. How you penetrate that market has to be based on your own judgment.
Well, I think that this is so important to the work that we're doing, and I think that it's going to be pivotal for some of the recommendations that we make. So I'm really grateful for the work that you've been doing on it. Thank you, Gordon.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. Did you all have any more questions about the charts or anything else that you wanted to maybe look into in terms of demographics?
Jill, I was going back through my emails. I don't find this other Fairfield specific chart anywhere.
Okay.
We can send it to you, Mark. It's
You have
actually
this
a PDF document. It's actually a PDF document that Gordon had put together. So we can send it to everybody on the committee.
Yeah, I mean, it might be in there. I was actually looking for an Excel, so maybe that's where I went off track, but I don't see it.
It's a PDF. It's not a Excel.
I may have it, but okay. I couldn't find it right now, so like
I'll take care of that.
Okay, I have a date for it. Oh, well, I sent it to Ross.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
So when did you get it? Ready?
so you didn't send it to us.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Let me forward it to you now.
I thought I was going crazy, that's all. Wouldn't take much.
It's only 4 pages.
So did you want to move on to the next discussion item?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. We can look this over, and if you have any questions, we can ask Gordon offline.
Okay, that'd be great.
Well done.
So it's research, and I think that it's a great idea to divvy up maybe the towns to do more in-depth research on each town and update that chart that we did just a few years ago. So,
You did that chart.
yeah, I don't have the file, so I'd have to recreate. And I think it's better on Excel. We should probably just do an Excel chart.
Didn't I send you the Excel charts?
Well, they were really, they weren't fleshed out so much. They were they were probably the first
They were-
drafts.
They were the ones you did, so
Yeah.
that's all I had. No, that's what I found. So
Yeah, I think that it wasn't, it didn't have a lot of the information, unfortunately.
some did, some do, some don't.
So do you want to divvy up towns?
You're talking about all the programs or just deferral?
I think touching base with the assessors on all of the programs and how many participants they have in everything, and yeah. Do you not think that we should be doing that, or what does everybody think?
I think no one else is gonna do it other than us, you know? It's- I thought we were focusing on just deferral, but we should focus on everything. Because
I mean,
one leads to the other.
You might as well while you're there, or
Just to have the comparison
Yeah.
and to try to understand, like Ross said, why people might be participating in one of their programs and they're not participating in the same way in ours.
Let's divvy it up online. Let's take too long.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just divvy it up between our group online.
Okay.
aren't these I mean, what do we really look at? I mean, our program's published in the town website. I mean,
Yes.
are other towns not publishing this on their website?
No,
Not-
it's in their ordinance.
It's not completely the same. The last time I did this, I had to contact offices directly
Mhm.
to get the information about income limits and definitely for the number of participants, that's not readily
I
available.
know that, but like their whole program,
Their programs, they're all on in their ordinances, but oftentimes like ours, they haven't been updated. So if there are COLA changes or they're not reflected in the ordinance, that's one issue.
Yeah, like remember how Reading used to just give like $2,000 if you were 65?
yeah.
Well, now because this year they had a surplus, it was like 2607 or something. Everyone got 2708 this year because they had a surplus. So in their program, like we wouldn't have known that unless we called them. So, I mean, are the towns the same towns that we looked at before?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll send a list of all of them. You did so much of the work
Well, I
already.
did the deferral, but see, then there were towns that had no deferral. There were like 3 out of 16 that didn't even have it. So
Yeah.
that's what, and some you have to apply for credit before you can apply for deferral. So they do intertwine. So I see that point. Yeah.
Is there anything specific that you think that we should be including in that comparative data that we didn't include the last time?
I would say maybe you've already done that because you focused on the deferral plan. But how does each town treat that as an expense? It's technically an accounts receivable and therefore should not have a revenue impact.
Right.
That would be a key question. I know it's easier to do it face to face, but I would be so interested in understanding how they justify the program to their fiscal management. Do they keep track of something that we don't keep track of in the program? I don't understand why they wouldn't want to share that with you. They might be proud of it.
It's not like they wouldn't want to share it, just the people that you call, unless you have an appointment with the assessor, might be a clerk who's, just knows, might have to ask. It might just be difficult, like you said, unless because, they don't have to give us the info. They can just say, assessor's on vacation this summer, But I mean, we can at least try to get it.
Well, I'll tell you, I've done this kind of thing for my church with 20 other churches, getting salary income and that kind of stuff. And the way you open the door is you get the honcho, somebody, a selectman who knows somebody in one of the other towns and he'll say, of course, I'd be glad to make the contact for you. So that's something to consider.
We tried that route a few years ago and it didn't reap very, very many, it wasn't detailed enough. So when the first selectman reached out to people, he had a list of questions, but people got back to him with like maybe one of the questions answered. And then that package was given to us. It was incomplete information. And the same thing happened with CCM. We thought CCM would be a great outreach organization to just contact all of the assessors. And we thought that maybe they would be interested in monitoring this topic because I think it's relevant to all towns. We're all trying to figure out what's successful and what helps seniors, what's a good program and how do you define that? So, but they didn't seem very interested in doing that.
So Jill, just two possible options. One would be you could do a survey and promise all the participants that they would get the survey data from all the towns.
Oh, yeah.
So that you're really offering them a carrot in response to the work. Or alternatively, you could ask, I guess, some group like CCM if they could provide the resources to do that. And, you know, based upon some comments that they made during one of the Charter Commission meetings, the head of that seemed like he was amenable to do that kind of work. But I mean, if, you know, I've done this work myself before, you know, where let's say you're doing a 10-town survey and you have certain, you know, information that everyone has to submit, you've got a standard form, and you capture the information, you compile it, and, you know, everyone gets a copy of the results in exchange for providing the information.
And you put a crisp dollar bill. Remember those days? You'd always feel guilty if you kept the dollar and didn't do the survey.
Yeah, but the survey data is even more important than the dollar.
I even,
And if the
guilty when you-
assessor isn't willing to participate, for instance, if the assessor is a point person, then he or she has to basically respond or be ready to explain to his or her town as to why not, right?
I think that's a good idea. We can reach out to CCM and see if maybe they're interested in putting out a survey.
What does that stand for, CCM?
Connecticut Conference of Municipalities.
Oh, right.
It's a great idea.
Good. So I think that that's it for tonight.
I feel like we have job security. Don't you?
Can we just add a couple more things before you adjourn? Just a couple of points.
Yeah, sorry.
Gordon, I don't know if you had any, but I wanted to just pass on a couple of thoughts. Do you have anything, Gordon?
no, go ahead.
Okay, so one is, I did send those comments back to you, Jill, about Ross's report. And basically those were an effort to try to explain why some of those unusual results might have occurred. So, you know, if you have any follow-up, you or the committee members have any follow-up questions on that, I'd be happy to talk about that, further. You know, now or later for that matter, but it was just an effort to sort of explain, you know, why perhaps some of those discontinuities in outcomes seem to have occurred. The second area had to do with Ross's report that you were asking about the max, you know, the percentage max and the dollar max, and then the minimum and so forth. Is it your understanding that those are, in other words, it's not necessarily the case that 1,103 people were subject to one of these caps, because someone could have been subject to multiple caps?
That's not the way I understood his description of what this represented.
So in other words, almost every one of the program participants hit one of these caps.
That's my understanding. And that last column is very, I just don't really understand it because it's so much higher than what had been projected. And it's higher than real numbers we received from that first year's implementation. So last year's assessor report, he gave us this information and he gave it to the chairman of the Board of Finance subcommittee. And it was a much lower number, I think by at least 100. I think it was lower by 150.
Okay.
And it's also surprising to me considering that assessments went up. So I don't know, I would have thought that would have made it harder to get to the 75% max.
Oh, right.
So 97% of the people are getting the max benefit in some form. Is that?
It's what that table seems to reflect, and it's just, it's baffling to me. I don't understand that. I mean, at the higher income levels, I can see how people would hit the caps for the max dollar amounts and the max percentages, but not the 25% minimum.
When people's property taxes go up, is there an automatic adjustment to the compensation received by each of those participants?
In a way, because the benefits reflect that the percentages multiplied by their assessed value.
I see. It's all, so it is adjusted automatically,
Yeah,
and unless it's inhibited by reaching a limit.
right.
You're still questioning?
So, yeah, I don't know whether it's worthwhile, it seemed like Ross was going to look that over again, but it seemed it might be worthwhile to confirm that that's the case.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody really looked at the tables, but you can see a cliff at the 40,000 income range in that schedule of income ranges in the middle. Those tables, if you really parse out all of that information, you can see how total benefits for starting with that income range drop significantly versus the lower income ranges.
You mean the 49,000 up?
Right,
From, yeah.
yes.
All right.
Okay.
And there's only 20 fewer participants in that.
And the other interesting thing is that we have people in the program who have assessments going up to over $1 million, which is a new thing for this year and last year.
Wait, say that again? I didn't see that.
There's one
One
participant,
person.
an assessed value of over $1 million. There's only 12 total participants over 750,000 assessed value.
Is that assessed value or market value?
Assessed.
Assessed.
So there's 12 people with houses worth over $1 million in the program.
Yeah, valued, right?
That's a hard one to explain.
Least income
That's crazy.
is low, but they have good equity because they bought a house years ago and appreciated.
They're house rich, cash poor.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly you could cap the benefits, you could find a way to cap the benefits that people like that would receive. In other words, rather than receiving the normal percentage at a certain value, they would just be capped. I think I saw one town that was doing that in looking around a little bit. But
Well, it looks like they're getting 5,500.
Yeah.
The average benefit and total benefit is 5,500, and there's only one.
Yeah. Because those people also have a chance to get a home equity loan.
Maybe not. Maybe you need income for that. Who
To
knows?
pay their taxes.
Pay interest only.
This is another issue that we could be discussing because there are towns that do both QTAV and assessment limits for this reason. But I've always thought that people with large homes also might need help, and it helps the town to have them stay in their homes as long as possible.
Sure.
We do save money, and by not having families move into those large homes.
I agree, but it's just an eyesore in the program. when people hear about it. It's a button.
Yep.
And Jill, just following up on this item that I think you had mentioned before, in terms of your discussions with Ross, if he could provide the data to us in a spreadsheet, we could slice and dice that database, or someone else could slice and dice that database for you. So you could look at things from a multivariate standpoint, instead of just looking at things by assessed value or by income. You could look at assessed value within income group and any way you wanted to structure the income group. If he could capture a number for QTAV, for instance, that could be built in as well. So you could do all kinds of really interesting analysis. If the raw data could be provided to someone to do that slicing and dicing, it's pretty, once you get the spreadsheet, it's really easy to do it.
That's one thing that we haven't discussed with Ross is the possibility of tracking QTAV. And it sounds like it sounds like he wouldn't be able to do it because I think that he might be relying almost exclusively on that affidavit.
Yeah, I think you're right now.
Mhm.
But realistically, if we're going to continue to use QTAV, and have sort of a hybrid of considering assets and then also considering income, it's just not fair to people going more and more going forward who are going to have deferred income vehicles as opposed to, income in the form of pensions or Social Security. And that we're going to find some sort of alternative way going forward of reflecting that. I mean, for instance, one way of doing that would be to take a QTAV number and attribute some income stream to that. So, QTAV times X% is deemed to be income, and you add that to the pension or Social Security income in terms of figuring an aggregate income. But it's the current method, just as we've talked about before many times, is just not fair to a large percentage of the population.
It's inequitable. Yeah. Well, thank you. I think this was a really productive meeting. So, but I know
Lively.
Cindy has to get going too. So,
So sorry, gosh, huh?
is there a motion
Yes.
to adjourn? Okay, I'll second that.
Yeah.
Herb,
And we'll be adjourning at 8
Herb
o'clock.
Gordon.